Okay, so my version of this question, excuse me, said, I've got 15% acid, I got 25% acid, I got 65% acid, and they want me to make a mixture of 128 liters that has 35% acid, and they tell me you got to use 3 times as much, or they're going to use 3 times as much of the 65% as the 25%. So I set this up. So I said X, of course, is the amount of 15%, Y is the 25% stuff, and Z is the 65% stuff. And I know that X plus Y plus Z has to be 128 because he told me that. And then I know that this is the amount of acid equation that I wrote. So 0.85, so 15% of the X stuff and 25% of the Y stuff plus 65% of the Z stuff has to equal 128 times 0.35. And then they told me, and here's the part where people fall down. I've fallen down many times with this kind of stuff. You got to think of it. It's just sometimes you're going to sit and draw and think about it. But they said, I'm supposed to use 3 times as much of the 65 stuff as the 25% stuff. So that means Z is 3 times as big as Y. So in order to set them equal, I got to say 3Y equals Z. Okay, so 3 times as much of the 25% stuff as the 65% stuff. So there's my linear system. 3 variables. I have 3 equations. I chose to set this up as a matrix. I'm hoping you gather from all my work that 3x3 systems are higher if you want to use matrices. The old days of having to do substitution, while it works and sometimes it's easier, not always the case. I encourage you to learn how to do this. So the coefficients of the first equation is 1, 1, 1. So I wrote 1, 1, 1. Then if you've done any matrix work before, it's the row times the column equals that. So if you look at this, that row, 1 times 1 plus 1 times Z plus 1 times X plus 1 times Y plus 1 times Z has to equal 128, which is my first equation. Then the same deal here for the second one. 0.15X times plus 0.25Y plus 0.65Z has to equal the 44.8. That's the 128 times the 0.35. And then the Z, I just brought the Z over. So 0x plus 3y minus 1z has to equal 0. Now the beautiful thing of the matrix equations, we know, and if you watch this video, there are those videos about solving by inverse matrices. The inverse of this times this, or this times the inverse of this, because they got to have them so that the rows or the columns match to the rows. So I'll do inverse of this times this, and that'll be my answer. So on my graphing calculator, whoops, that's not my graphing calculator. Here we go. So you've watched this video. What I did, you see how I set this up? I put the matrix, I said second matrix and edit. You're always going to remember to edit. If you have a graphing calculator, I'll do a quick walkthrough here. Edit. And then you got to type in your values, your coefficient matrix. And then you got to remember to quit. And then second matrix. Matrix. Got to edit. Matrix 2. And that's the constant matrix, the 128, the 44.8, and the 0, right? There's the 128, the 44, and the 0. Okay, and then I quit this screen. I did the inverse of the coefficient matrix times the constant matrix, and I got those values. So that tells me 64 liters, gallons. What is this? Liters. So 64 liters of the 15%, 16% of the 25%, and 48 liters of the 65% is what it takes. Okay. So it's certainly a lot less work than doing this by hand. Okay, so I would encourage you to try that if you need more help. Now, there are other calculators out there. If you don't have a graphing calculator, let's go find one. So let me stop this video and I'll go find one. So I found this one out at Math is Fun. I don't remember what I did on my videos, but this is one that just came up that seems to work pretty well. So how do I use this calculator? Well, let's see, 1 1, 1, 1, and then what is that? 0.15, 0.25, and 0.65. And just so like when you get in toward the final exam or even next week's quiz, you can change the dimensions of this matrix just by clicking on those arrows. And probably the same way for the, can I change the rows? Yes, I can. Oh, that's cool. I still like the calculator better, but the handheld calculator better. But let's see, what is that? We get 3 and -1. And then I want to make this be a 3 by 1 matrix. And what is it? 128. Make sure you type your numbers in right. 128. Then was that 44.8, and then 0. So now what I got to do? Well, I got to find the inverse of matrix A, and I see when I look at these buttons down here, I have the inverse of A. So I'm going to click inverse of A, and then because I don't have a third matrix to use, I'm going to store that. I'm going to send that back to my matrix A and replace it. So now inverse of A times B, and see that button there, AB, A times B, and there's the same answers I got from my grapher. And it didn't cost $100. So, all right, so that's how you do these, and it works pretty well.